Welcome to another edition of StarTalk Radio. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, your host. I'm an astrophysicist with the American Museum of Natural History. And as is common, I have with me my comedic co-host, Chuck Nice.
Hey.
Chucky, baby.
How are you, Neil?
Welcome back.
Thank you, my friend.
Excellent.
Always good to be back.
Excellent.
Always good to be back.
Whatever my show is on, you come in and mess with it.
Or mess it up. We're not sure yet. Jury's still out.
So this week we're going to be talking about hip-hop music, and we're going to be featuring my interview with GZA. GZA. In addition to you, I got to share the stage with you here, okay? So
if you don't mind.
Christopher Emdin,
Yes,
Emdin.
That's correct.
You're assistant professor up at Columbia?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. And your title is what? What do they call you?
Assistant professor of science education.
Science education?
And
You specialize
director
in?
of secondary school initiatives in the Urban Science Education Center.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you care about just folks in the inner city getting educated?
That's the majority of my work, yeah. Educated in science.
Okay, what do you do outside of the majority of the work?
Well, I listen to hip hop.
Okay, all right. And that keeps you, so that fleshes out your...
Most of it, right?
Yeah.
I listen to hip hop, I check out your YouTube videos, I watch some HGTV, a little bit of everything.
And you learn how to tie a bow tie.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
And that is tied. That's not clip-on.
No, not at all.
Let me check it.
Nice.
Now I gotta readjust, or the mirrors.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah. So, this is because the bow tie is the emergent style in hip-hop performers, I'm told.
It is in some. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
Is there a hip-hop artist that wears a bow tie? I'm trying to think of one that...
They wear them on the award shows. I was gonna say Farnsworth Bentley, but he doesn't quite classify as an artist.
Yeah.
But the look is becoming more trendy, so I might have to move to something else.
Well, I'm honored that you get so dressed up for this show. So GZA, founding member of the hip-hop group Wu-Tang. Wu-Tang Clan.
That's right.
Right. And so...
Shaolin represent.
Yeah, well, that's how that rolls. And so you've used hip hop to help educate people. Is that how you come at this?
Yeah, absolutely. So research-wise, I get into classrooms, and my goal is to engage urban youth of color in science. And so that meant changing curriculum. It meant training teachers. It meant a whole bunch of different things, and I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And I decided to sort of step into the dimension of interrogating youth culture, and that hip-hop just came out of it.
Oh, okay.
And so they were so deeply engaged in hip-hop culture, so completely disengaged in science. So I had to find a way where there were some intersections between hip-hop and science.
So science, it's not just learning, it's science.
No, science in particular. So there's learning, and that learning part is powerful, but the connections with science is even more powerful.
So there are connections between hip-hop and science.
Millions, billions, trillions.
Like the Doppler effect of a speeding bullet.
Well,
that's a section.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm ahead of myself.
It could be a lesson. It could be a lesson. Listen,
Okay.
nothing is sort of outside of the realms of possibility here. So if they want to know about bullets, then hey, we can have that conversation.
The Doppler effect, there's a high pitch frequency shift as it comes towards you, and then a low pitch shift as it emerges. So it goes like that.
Right.
Unless you're hit, then you only hear the first part. I'm just saying.
Well, rappers actually try to create. So Kanye West has his verse where he was like, I'm shooting and I'm like, bing, like he makes the sound.
Got the Doppler effect in the song.
In the song without even knowing it. And so those are the kind of things we explore, right? So I'm like, Kanye West makes that noise. Yeah. That's the sound of a bullet. Does that connect to anything? Is that arbitrary? And that becomes, the way to spark conversation.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And we're celebrating my interview with GZA, the hip-hop master, GZA, who is founder of the Wu-Tang Clan. Wu-Tang Clan, I get my G in the right place there. And I chatted with him about what role science might play as the muse of an artist, in particular of a musician. Let's find out what he told me. You got my whole astrophysics vocabulary oozing out of your rap lyrics. And so how does that happen? I love it. I just want to understand it.
Just an interest in science and planets and the universe.
And so, there's plenty of people who are interested in it, but it doesn't infiltrate.
Well, I'm an artist first.
Yeah,
I'm a writer. I write mostly music.
Okay.
I'm working on novels and scripts now.
Really? Okay.
Yes, I am. But I always thought, as an MC, growing up, it's always been about being lyrical for us.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm
Okay.
born in Brooklyn, lived in Staten Island. I lived in all the boroughs.
Okay.
And
Staten Island.
Yes, Staten Island. Shaolin.
Staten
We call
Island.
it Shaolin. Okay. Wu-Tang. But, you know, it started from back then. It was always about being lyrical and writing the tightest lyric and sharpest lyric and being witty and also incorporating things around us and anything we can incorporate into music. Like, I'm not a sports fan at all, but every now and then I always incorporate things about sports.
So you're reaching into pop culture, and there it is, and it's there for you.
Yes.
So, all right, but were your earliest songs that way?
Some of the songs, some of our lyrics, we went there. Years ago, I remember one time RZA had this rhyme. It was about conception, being born, and it started. It was a line about when my mind flashed back to a eerie mood when I was just a sperm cell in a fallopian tube. Oh, he was about 13. Then.
That's a great.
So.
Very good. And so in Brooklyn, if you start taking an interest in the universe, and there are other rhymers, rappers, you had to be a little weird for doing that. Isn't that right? It can't have been normal.
It depends on, it comes off as not being normal to most. But
I wasn't normal doing it, and I wasn't even a rapper.
Well, it depends on how you deliver it. You know, if I'm delivering it in a way where I'm like, Earth is the third planet.
Okay.
And the sun shines light.
Right.
It's
Okay.
not done
that doesn't play.
Right.
Not in Brooklyn. Not in. Okay.
But if it's in a way where you're saying my universe run like clockworks forever, my words are pulled together, sudden change in the weather, the nature and the scale of events don't make sense. A storm with no one in, you're drawn in by immense gravity that's going mad. Clouds of dust and debris moving at colossal speeds. They crush an MC. So you speak about the universe and planets, but you still incorporate the element of MCing.
And the mood and the feeling.
The feeling, yes.
And so you've embraced the universe. A lot of cool vocabulary there. I make a big deal of the fact that our vocabulary is very accessible. A galaxy, the dwarf, a black hole, Big Bang. And a lot of them are even one syllables. I'm guessing that makes it easier to rhyme and easier to pulse into a lyric.
Yes.
Rather than the words of geologists who are...
Of course. You know, Rakim, I usually quote him on some of his lyrics. And he had this line years ago, and this was in the 80s, where he said, I'm the creator of the alphabets. Now let's communicate when I translate the situation straight. No dictionaries necessary to use. Big words do nothing but confuse and lose. So...
There it is.
Half short, twice strong.
Beautiful.
The only difference is if I use the word nova, I'll be speaking about a star, unlike the average rapper who will probably be talking about a car.
I love that.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
From fallopian tubes to exploding stars.
Exploding star, except, you know, the rhyme about the fallopian tube, that isn't ectopic pregnancy, to be honest.
The sperm in the
sperm in the fallopian tube, you don't really want that as a woman.
He was 13. I mean, the fact that he was going there.
But he went from there to, like, you know, basically cosmic storms.
Exactly.
Which a lot of people don't even realize that there are cosmic storms.
There's storms on Saturn, on Jupiter. Jupiter has a big, giant red spot. It's a storm.
Right.
You call it a red spot because that's what it looked like to the first people who named it. But you look a little closer, you study it, it's a cyclone larger than the planet Earth.
Wow.
Raging on Jupiter for 300 years. Mars has dust storms. Dust storms kick up and you can't see what's happening on the surface.
Look at that.
That's where the aliens can redistribute their
Absolutely, yes.
They can cover their tracks.
That's when they cover their tracks.
So this thing about science getting into pop culture leaders, I'm curious about that. What have you seen that?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I'm just like.
Well, yes, you've seen it, but have you?
The little lesson you just described just now. If you introduce that to a young person, they would be like, "Oh man, I got to spit a verse about that." And so what?
Did you say spit a verse?
Spit a verse,
okay,
meaning I have to write a rhyme and then perform it.
To say spit a verse from someone wearing a bow tie, I just have to.
You know,
I have to cover the bow tie so I can hear you correctly. Okay?
See, now you're forcing me to want to kick a rap, you know, spit a rap on here. I may have to do that to prove myself.
Just to gain street cred here.
So street cred.
All right.
But GZA made so many sort of insightful points in that clip. And the first of which was, a lot of people do hip hop pedagogy or think that rap pedagogy is, they're like, kids like rap, let's rap. And they have the kids create raps or they perform raps and it doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work is because it's just like what goes on in school already to rhyme.
Right.
And that doesn't work. And so the distinction between, saying something that rhymed and being a prolific MC, which requires analogy, metaphor, drawing connections,
and it seems to be
weaving
mostly
stories.
Cross-referencing.
Yeah.
Which means you have to learn and know some knowledge here, some knowledge here, in order to access that, to bring it together.
Absolutely. I mean, I was working with a young person once, and he, we get into the classroom, and I want him to learn about water. He's like, okay, I'm teaching a lesson. He's like, yeah, your lesson was all right. So I said, you know what, you're a rapper. Spit a rap about it. So he starts rapping, and he's rapping about everything but water. He's like, I'm fly, I'm sick. I'm like, you had one line. He's like, I flow like water, and by the way, I'm fly and I'm sick. And so I was like, well, this is not gonna work. Go home.
Because he's not actually making it work.
He's not making it work. So I say, go home, read the textbook, come back, and write a new rhyme. He comes back in the morning, he's like, yo, it's type hard to spit a 16 about H2O. Right? And what that means, I'll interpret. It means that it's challenging.
Okay.
It's challenging for me to be able to write a rap about water if I'm really gonna understand the concept of water. So I need at least a week to do it justice.
Or in other words, he needs a week to learn enough about water to then know how to reach in and
pull out
the themes out of it to really make it a real rap.
When water gets cold, it gets less dense. When you freeze it, it floats on the water. It was. Which was once.
You gotta rhyme, man. I'm gonna kick you out of my cipher for that, for those bars.
In my interview with GZA, because I had him here in studio, I wanted to know the history of the Wu-Tang Clan. And because he's one of the founding members. Let's find out what he tells us about that. Cool. Tell me about a little bit of history of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Wu-Tang is a group mostly from Staten Island. Well, Staten Island-based group. Some of us are from Brooklyn. And we put an album out in '93 called Enter the 36 Chambers, Wu-Tang. And 9 members at the time. Some of us had solo careers prior to that.
So you were assembled out of the musical
like a
ether.
band.
Assembled.
Yeah. Many of us childhood friends.
And tell me about its influence.
Very strong influence.
Yeah.
Very, very.
How do you account for that? Other than just your great performers, is there there's got to be something else going on there?
Well, 9 individuals.
Because it affected
9 different personalities.
culture.
Of course.
As though hip-hop took a turn.
Well, every now and then, history takes its turn. You have conscious rap at some point. Then you have party rap. Then you have revolutionary rap. Then it comes back around again, conscious, party.
And you would characterize...
Wu-Tang was just a group that was just, you couldn't resist at the time. 9 members, 9 individuals, different personalities, great music. We all had solo careers also. I mean, albums that were charting, 4 or 5 albums on the charts at the same time. It's this big explosion, this big bang. And the influences.
So how would you say rap and hip-hop differed emerging on the other side of the Wu-Tang Clan compared to before? That's a portal that the genre passed through.
I think it's forever going through portals. It's forever changing.
Well, if it's not going through portals, it means people aren't as creative as they ought to be.
Or they're just going into certain areas they've never been and don't know anything about, But it's forever changing musically, as far as corporate-wise. I mean, it's on a whole nother level as far as the money, the business side. But I think lyrically, it's regressed.
What do you mean?
As far as the lyrical side of it. I mean, if you take hip-hop from the 80s or this golden era, or even in the 90s, and the majority of the MCs that were out there, they were mostly lyrical. Even my first trip I made to the Bronx, one of my first trips to the South Bronx from Staten Island.
Born and raised in the Bronx. Yeah.
I was around 11, and we had 2 MCs in our whole borough of Staten Island. And when I got to the Bronx, whole bunch of MCs. You know, I have this line where I say, I was born with the mic in my hand, and I took it from Brooklyn to the SI land. I pulled up on the block, got out the truck. It was the first of pit stops, the era of the spinning top, around the birth of hip hop. That was something I had identified with, so I made it my point to exploit this fly gift. And me and the RZA made trips to the BX, a mass of ferocious MCs, town of T-Rex, giants in every ways, rap flows for every day. We knew we would get a reward with a price to pay. The basic training was beyond entertaining, just a cadence of verbal expression, self-explaining. So those are my early days of traveling to the Bronx, but they had this mass of ferocious MCs, and everyone was so lyrically good that it only made us sharpen our sword. Nowadays, it's not like that. I mean, I hear stuff you hear.
So they're not as literate?
No.
That's what you're saying?
At all.
Do they still have ideas, they just don't know how to express it? Or
I think many imaginations are sterile at the time.
Why?
Because you're not producing anything new. Like,
they don't have a muse.
It's the same thing.
The universe is talking to you and you're responding.
Yes.
They've got nothing talking to them.
They just, no, they don't hear. You know, when your parents say, you're not listening to me, you know they're speaking, you hear the sound, you feel the vibration, but it's not resonating.
That doesn't get in there.
No.
So the universe is talking to you every day.
Of course.
Now,
not only the universe, the earth, people, planets, objects, beings. I'm inspired by all. You know, I once said, in a lecture when I was speaking about inspirations, I can be inspired by the spider because his web is 50 times or 20 times stronger than steel. So that's amazing in itself, and I'm inspired by that. And I can write.
So you have to know enough about the spider's web to even be inspired by it.
Yes. But you have to be willing to learn.
You got to be curious. Right.
You know?
Right. So there's a whole community of rappers who've lost their sources of creativity. That's got to be it.
Yeah. And everyone is following. The majority is following. If it's 100, 99 follow. Only one raps in his own voice. So everyone is following, so it's the same thing over and over.
So we got to spread this.
And it's not really the story you're telling, it's how you tell the story. It's how you tell the story. You know? I think being in a club can be interesting, depending on what you're talking about.
Your specialty is exploring how to bring science to the inner city in ways that are culturally relevant, and that's awesome. Just give me an example of that.
I mean, I'm just basing this on the last clip we heard from GZA, this infatuation in hip hop with sort of completion and circular motion is really, really intriguing. The fact that when rappers get together, they engage with each other, they do so in what they call a cipher. And a cipher means that we have to position ourselves in a circle.
Right.
And this notion of completion within our modes of communication, and also, completion and circular motion in the universe and in outer space.
Some of this sounds kind of new agey.
Well, it is new agey. But that's how scientific thought is developed, right? Isn't it? You get to a point where
we need a fresh idea that can take you to a new place.
Exactly, and that's what we're doing in the world of education.
But at some point, your plane has to land from that. I mean, you got to land somewhere with that, all right?
Well, you land. You got
to land on a curriculum somehow.
You land just enough to make some sense of what's just happened, and then you take off once more.
Oh, okay. All right. That can work. Yeah. And so this...
When does the layover happen?
Depends on who you fly with.
So in my interviews with GZA, we talked about the role, certainly the role that media thinks violence plays in hip-hop. And it's always played up, perhaps more than it actually needs to be or should be, or is... Perhaps it's not even representative of most of the hip-hop that's out there. It just makes a better headline. Well, I brought all this up with GZA, and I wanted to get his reaction to this because that's like you can't just sweep that under the rug. Absolutely. It's out there.
Right.
And let's find out what GZA's reaction to when I brought up violence in hip-hop. So then there's all the songs where violence is a part of it. Is there something missing in the uninitiated listener? They think it's just all violence. But of course, there's somebody trying to emote in those lyrics, right?
Well, it depends on how you interpret the lyric. I mean, sometimes I run into people who say, well, 36 Chambers got me through school. And then when I go back and listen to the album, I don't see how. I mean, I know it's great music, you know, according to fans and those who've listened to Wu-Tang for years, but I don't see what they're seeing. So it all depends on how you interpret the message.
Well, good art allows the listener, the viewer, to personalize what they hear or see, right? I mean,
Right. Because you can't just take you know, I look at it like this sometimes. If they say, Wu-Tang has got me through school, and then automatically it pops in my head, Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to F with. How did that get you through school? You know, sometimes.
Well, so get them to explain. Maybe it was an escape.
But it was a certain, you know, the timing and all that when the album came out, whatever they were going through, they were able to relate to the majority of the songs anyway. So as a whole.
Okay, it was the total philosophy and package that represented. Personally, I'm not with the schools of thought that say people got violent because they listened to a song. People are violent, they're violent, right?
Right, exactly.
But still, it's nice to have some hope in your art. And if the art is only about violence, what do I reach for?
You reach for the peace. You reach for the music without the violence. And like I said, I don't think it's just the whole thing about violence. It's just the way you're talking or telling your story. Because most rappers have this thing where they're from the streets and they're telling their story, and this is how I grew up, and everything I say is real, and I'm not a fake drug dealer. I actually sold drugs, and this is what I'm giving you. But it's the same story. It's like watching the same movie over and over and over and over and over. You don't want to see it anymore. You don't want to hear it.
Story's been told.
Story's been told. In that way.
In that way. Because you've spoken of violence in your songs, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And what does that do? What role does that play?
It's just part of the story. It's just part of the story to get your point across. But it's not violence in a way where, you know, it's gory, or I got to speak about, you know, the screwdriver pulling your brains out and landing all on the back seat. It would probably be done in a way where you don't see the screwdriver. You don't see the brains. You just see blood coming through the door and hit, you know.
Very Hitchcock.
Draw your own imagination.
Hitchcock forces you to fill in the blanks. Shows you the edges of the violence.
That's how it should be.
Do you think there's a cultural bias against rap that you don't find against other expressions of violence in the American culture? Like evening television, like everything else?
I think that certainly does exist. And I think that in response to that, rappers pick up on what is sensationalized and realize that that's what gets attention. And so what could normally be a thin slice of the culture becomes exaggerated.
You know, I'm curious about role models, because you can, I think the concept of role model is overrated, personally, but because you can be inspired by anything, whether or not it's a human being, and nor should you be so invested in one individual that you're committed to everything they do. Spread it out, do it a la carte, is how I think about it. I spoke with GZA about what does it mean, because he clearly is a role model to some people, just how does he react to that? Let's check it out. I'm going to read you a posting on our Facebook page from Michael Rafales, if I pronounced that right. As a teenager, we solicited inquiries because they knew you were going to be on StarTalk. As a teenager, it was not my school, but it was Wu-Tang who taught me the idea of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. It was because of this idea that I went into physics. I'm now a high school science teacher with a passion for sharing my love of science and improving science literacy.
Wow. That's great.
With that going on, I'm not even necessary. Let's do more of that. What do we need me for? If you can sing, your influence does this. This is all we're trying to do here.
I think that's one of the unique things about being an artist, is that you have a voice that people hear and listen to, so it's important to say something that's important.
How many artists don't?
99 out of 100.
So if your audience are not just moving to the beat, they're being philosophically schooled in a good way, not in the abusive way.
Right.
You got schooled. Philosophically schooled, that's a whole other understanding of the role music can play in our lives. isn't it? I mean, think about it. Most music, nobody's saying, I'm gonna play this so that my mind can be in a new academic place. That doesn't happen.
Well, I think some musicians think like that.
Well, they can be in a new musical place, but in a scholarly place.
Right.
The person here telling me he's a physics teacher in high school because he listens to Wu-Tang? I don't know anyone who's listened to any other performer who could make that claim. No one said, Elvis, you know, I became a science teacher because I listened to your song. This just doesn't happen. So, have you fully embraced the power over life's trajectories that you might actually be wielding?
Yes, I have. I mean, that's just one story out of many. I mean, I've heard several stories throughout the years, just about the influence that Wu-Tang has had on 2 generations now of people. People that started with us, grew with us, and then their children, or their nephews or nieces. So it's like a whole nother generation of kids that's listening. And, I'm honored to be part of that. I mean, that's a great thing.
Wow. So I have to tell you, before I began my interview with GZA, I had no understanding of the magnitude of their influence. And like I said, if it's one thing to say, oh, I was inspired to stay in love or to break up or to be happy today because of a song I listened to, nobody talks about pop music as something that sends them back to school. So how do you that must make you feel good.
Absolutely, I love it.
Educator.
It affirms everything I believe in. Right.
Everything.
Yeah.
But it makes sense because if you think about it, kids, when they listen to hip hop, they listen to it over and over and over and over again. And as they start to do that, they start to recognize what these words are saying.
Right.
And therein lies the inspiration.
Right. Particularly if a young person is listening to a rapper who is pulling from different spaces. And so it forces people to want to study. You know, if you listen to a GZA and he's talking about the cosmos and he's talking about stars, he's talking about the universe.
Where did that come from?
Right. I'm memorizing the lyrics and all of a sudden I want to understand it.
So it's inspiration to then learn more.
Absolutely.
There it goes. What I know as a scientist, and what I think some people also know, is that the universe can serve as a muse for scientists because there's a lot of information out there that is still in need of connectivity. Right? I still need it. I still want it. And so I spoke with GZA about, how science factors in to his creativity. What's your favorite science concept that keeps coming back to you when you're penning lyrics? Could be an idea or an object or a thing.
It's just how everything is connected.
Because we are connected.
Yes. I mean, it's all amazing. And
So it inspires you because, so see, here's, it's amazing and so it inspires you. So now I worry that if you learn so much about it that it's no longer amazing, will it stop inspiring you?
I don't think I can ever learn so much about it. I mean, because we learn it every day. Even with physicists, y'all discover new things.
Yeah, every day.
All the time, y'all
crazy stuff too.
Build stronger, more powerful telescopes, and y'all going further back into time.
And the particle accelerator, yep.
And exploring new things. So
okay.
I don't think I can ever learn.
So the universe is your muse.
I love it.
As I think the universe has been for many artists of late. I get a phone call every couple of weeks. There's an artist who's designing a sculpture for a city and they want to align it with the sun. It was a star. And they're feeling the universe. And there was a day when there was other things inspiring artists, but not science. So do you think it's because science is more accessible today, that it's reaching into the soul of the artist?
I think it's more accessible. I also think that people are learning more and more about themselves and their connection with the universe.
So, GZA's a deep guy.
Yeah.
Much deeper. I'd known only very little about him. I read his bio before I started the interview. And I came out saying, wow, if every artist were this moved and inspired
Right.
by what they want to, by the messages they want to deliver.
There'd be a lot less crap on the radio.
That's definitely true. Or not.
Right? Or maybe there'd just be more intelligent crap.
Look at thank you, there it is. Because I think about it, I say, look at all the ways a person, someone growing up, they're exposed to advertising, they're exposed to TV, they're exposed to movies, they're exposed to, and if everybody had a mission statement that we want to be more educated at the end of your day, that's a whole different world we're talking about.
Yeah.
But you're at the pulse of that, right?
And that's what I find most fascinating about.
Because you wrote a book. What's the title of that book again?
Urban Science Education for the Hip Hop Generation.
Urban Science Education for the Hip Hop Generation.
Yeah.
So that's for, I guess, other educators.
It's for educators. It's for anybody who's intrigued about what connections are there between hip hop culture and science.
Because they're going to presume none up front.
Absolutely.
Right.
I always get that. What the heck are you doing?
Right, yeah,
with your
what's
life? Makes no sense. You know, I get that.
You're actually promoting this?
Right.
My God, man.
Well, okay, so maybe the next book would be promoting science in country western music. Don't stop at hip hop.
I mean, I think but the thing about hip hop is that it's so deeply connected, I find. I mean, youth who are immersed in hip hop culture, we're having this conversation about GZA and how insightful he is and how deep he is. And I go into urban public schools every week and I meet at least 5 GZAs every week. Young people who have the potential to have that type of deep insight. And that, I think, is what's most fascinating, that by virtue of being a piece of hip-hop culture, they develop a way of thinking and knowing and looking at the world that can very easily be aligned to
So
being
your
scientific.
job is to alert that teacher to take note of that if they see this evidence.
Watch that, look at that, don't miss that, don't beat that out of that person, because if you do, see, the thing about schooling as we know it oftentimes is that it just doesn't foster the creative mind. It's the Einstein story all over again, a million times over. The most brilliant scientists of our time, darn near flunking out. And that model continues today. And I mean, look at GZA. And I hate to bring up his story in detail. This is a guy, brilliant, intelligent, right? Didn't get an opportunity to complete school. Why? That's not a function of his intelligence. It's a function of the inability.
Or his motivation.
Or his motivation. It's a function of the inability for the school system to foster it.
So what you're saying is our school systems are failing. I mean, I hate to sum it up like that, but
Our school system is failing, but if it focuses more explicitly on culture, there's possibilities for us to reframe it.
I like it.
that was good.
That works. So you got a quick something here? I got 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Spit.
I'm a physicist, lyricist, spitting this ridiculousness, so witness the ignorance I dismiss. I have to do that first so people know I can rap.
Right.
Then I can get into the topics.
Then you can talk to
Right,
them.
because
You
I need some authenticity, right?
gotta earn it.
So I love Newton and plus Einstein. I like Einstein because Einstein's mind is like mine. His formula was E = MC squared, which is weird because me is your favorite MC squared. Right? and so what I did there is I Einstein the formula, but if I just said that, it would make no sense. So I have to make a connection between the formula E = MC squared to the fact that me is your favorite MC squared. Then I can say, E's energy, M's mass, C's the speed of light, which is a
Because
constant.
if I were MC, I would so be MC squared.
There you go.
We got to wrap this up, Chuck.
Yeah, we
Thanks
do.
for being again on another episode of Star Talk.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Chris, for coming down from Columbia.
Thanks so much for having me.
You've been listening to Star Talk Radio. Find us on the web at startalkradio.net. We also tweet at Star Talk Radio. Star Talk is brought to you in part by a grant from the National Science Foundation.